Greetings and welcome to the Saco School Board meeting for Wednesday, February 8, 2023. Call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. Let the record reflect that all school board members are present. We'd like to invite you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. Item 3 of the agenda is to approve the school board meeting minutes dated January 11, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? School Board Member Truman.
I move we approve the school board meeting minutes dated January 11th, 2023.
Second.
Motion's been made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Johnston. Any discussion on the minutes for January 11th? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. School Board Member Archie.
Yes.
School Board Member Preble.
Yes.
School Board Member Richard.
Yes.
School Board Member Fortune.
Yes.
School Board Member Gale.
Yes.
School Board Member Truman.
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item 4, adjustments to the agenda. As I understand, there are no adjustments this evening. Moving on to item 5, correspondence. There is no correspondence in the packet this evening. So with that, we'll move on to item 6, public session. 2 folks have signed up for public session, and the first up is Holly Trottier, and I remind everyone to speak directly into the microphone, state your name, your address for the record, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening, I'm Holly Trottier, and I'm representing the Saco Education Association, and I would like to say the Saco Education Association would like to thank the Saco School Board and administrators for working with the staff so that teachers have quality time to focus on planning and assessing, thereby using assessment to drive instruction for our students. Thank you for sharing our values. We would also like to ask a question about the TA tuition overage plan being presented this evening. We noticed the following in the list: the unfilled literacy coach position at Young School, an unfilled special ed teacher movement, and district stipends not being filled. Our question is whether this is the plan for the rest of this school year or if this is a plan moving forward into next school year. In regards to the unfilled literacy coach position at Young School, we have noticed definite gaps for teachers who are seeking to deliver the best possible instruction to our students. Our coaches provide invaluable conversations and coaching cycles, assisting all of our teachers. Many veteran teachers look to coaches for ways to enhance the learning of students who are meeting standards, and coaches are able to help push the envelope of the status quo. New teachers rely on support to process the curriculum and deliver quality instruction through co-teaching models and consultation and planning. 30% or 11 total teachers of our combined staff of classroom teachers have 3 or fewer years experience, and 4 of those 11 are first-year teachers. This is a considerable percentage, and offering coaching support for them at this point in their career is crucial. One coach would not be able to provide quality support and meet all of their needs in effectively teaching K-2 literacy, which includes reading, writing, and phonics. 4 separate curriculums: reading, writing, phonics, and phonemic awareness. What teachers do at this level sets the stage for future learning. Research shows that if students aren't reading on grade level by grade 3, it becomes considerably harder to close the gap. Having strong, consistent support from coaches readily available to teachers in these areas is essential. K-2 will be implementing a new phonics program next year, and that will require support from literacy coaches. In addition to working in coaching cycles with individual teachers, coaches also work closely with PLCs. Only one literacy coach split between 2 buildings and 6 separate PLCs while covering 4 curriculum areas would impact the teacher's opportunity to deliver the quality instruction that we all desire for our students. Enriching activities that are organized by literacy coaches are less likely to happen if a coach is split between buildings. These activities include, but are not limited to, literacy nights, school-wide book clubs, literacy leaders from TA, among others. The special ed teacher movement has resulted in some teachers taking on additional responsibilities to provide specialized instruction. We've actually lost 2 special education teaching positions this year at both of our K-2 schools. The association feels that these teaching positions are necessary for optimal student growth. In addition, each time we reduce our teaching staff, we are increasing the workload of other teachers, impacting the ability to retain the teachers we currently have. Case in point, we have lost teachers mid-year this year, causing the movement within the district, which is why these positions have been vacated and subsequently not filled. Furthermore, the changes in stipends being proposed to save funds could directly impact extracurricular opportunities offered to our students. It is the hope of the association that these adjustments are just for the remainder of this year and are not impacting hiring decisions for next year. We request that you discuss these concerns at tonight's meeting when you discuss how to make up the deficit. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Inga Brown.
Hi, good evening. I'm Inga Brown. I live at 161 Simpson Road in Ward 1. I wanted just to quickly say how much I appreciated as a parent. I have a 7th grader at Saco Middle School, and how much I appreciated, Superintendent Ray, your communication to parents and the community on January 27th, as we knew that there would be some very difficult feelings with our students and our staff when some pretty violent video was released from Memphis, Tennessee. And I appreciated the resources that you provided. I think that this type of communication to families, to bring awareness to our students, what we're seeing at home, what we're seeing in the school is so important. And it also sends the message that we should be talking about this, we can be talking about this, we should be aware. And as we delicately tread still in difficult school years after COVID with lots of delicate feelings in the classroom. I just appreciated that very much, your proactive reaching out very much. Thank you for that. On a second note, it's a very superficial topic. I've been lucky enough this year to do some subbing in our Saco schools, and I've been enjoying that very much. I know that when I'm a sub at Saco Middle School, I have been surprised that classroom tissues are not provided to the classrooms. And I know that teachers usually bring in tissues, or parents are asked to donate tissues. But to me, classroom tissues are a standard operating procedure. There's not a class where kids aren't sneezing, coughing, bloody noses, and I just noticed that many classrooms do not have tissues. So, very cheap tissues, 2-ply, cheap, nothing fancy or anything. But I was surprised when I asked a teacher, are there tissues? And I was told no, that teachers have to bring them in or get them from parents. I think it's a pretty basic need that classrooms should have. So that's just a request for consideration that maybe at the younger grades, tissues are there all the time through parent donations, but I think at the middle school, I don't think parents are donating as much stuff to the classroom, if you will. I know Clorox wipes, expo markers, all of those things are extra that teachers need to bring in themselves, but tissues, I think, are just a standard thing that I think teachers should have in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. That is it for those that have signed up. If there's anyone else, if there's anyone who did not sign up who still wishes to speak to the school board, please come forward and be heard. With nobody seeking recognition, moving on to item 7 of tonight's agenda, and that is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Ray.
All right, good evening, everybody. A couple of weeks ago, when we were talking about snow days, boy, we went on a little bit of a run, and we thought we were in for a long, long summer of makeup days. Luckily, one storm missed us, and hopefully the storms will continue to miss us, and that we'll move into springtime. But we do have to think about the possibility of if you're at 5 days and what comes next. And we sent a survey out to staff members just to kind of think about all those options, because state law doesn't provide you with many options as a school district. It is add days on to the end of the calendar, or you have the option of adding 5 hours of additional time for up to 25 days throughout the year to make up a day. So if you do 5 hours after extended, that equals 1 day. And just once we get past those 5 days, as a board, you'll have some decisions to make. Obviously, there are some districts who have done remote, and I think that you guys over time have been pretty clear about what I feel personally about remote days is I do not see for younger students how that is even close to having a kid with a great staff member in a room, being behind a computer screen and trying to plan a quality lesson is difficult, especially on short notice. And the fact that it took us so long to kind of get up to speed during the pandemic of how to teach a kindergartner to go on to an iPad, or a parent to go on to Google Classroom, that I just don't see how you do that quality in 1 day. So we just have to be thinking about that makeup piece. Last weekend, obviously, we had some really cold weather. And certainly with that comes cancellations, and I'm sure people had feelings of the decision to cancel a middle school dance, but I've seen kids wait outside, and I don't know about other middle schoolers, but I can't get a jacket on mine. Sweatshirt at best, and just knowing that, you know, for a night to be out at minus 30, 40 degrees, a week can happen, and it will be much warmer this Friday night when our kids are waiting to get into the car. I think we're 50 on Friday. But what we need to say thank you to is Mike Jr. and the crew of maintenance staff, because we took some proactive approaches of, you know, usually we're not a group that says turn up the heat on the weekend, but that was a weekend to turn up the heat and make sure that our buildings could hold temperatures and monitor the buildings throughout the weekend. And we did really well in Saco, trying to get through those brutal temperatures, because quite frankly, without taking some of those preparations, you wind up with busted pipes, a lot of missed days, and a lot of damage that just takes time to fix. And if you noticed, if you were driving around the Saco Biddeford area on Saturday or Sunday, I think I saw more service trucks than I've ever seen in my life moving through the community and all of that. So big thanks to those folks who a lot of times don't get a lot of recognition, but you know, they do a lot to keep those buildings open and safe and warm so that we couldn't come back to school on Monday. Another thing that we're working on right now is the purchasing of an emergency software program called Share 911. Share 911 is a program that will allow our staff members, and this will be kind of a kickoff for the fall, to be able that if there was a severe emergency situation, to be able to notify all staff and or administration that it's time to go into a lockdown. One of the pieces that was really evident during the situation that happened this fall and working with other communities is that communication and the flow of information is extremely difficult in all of that. There's one of me and one phone, and everybody in the world who wants to text, know what's going on while you're trying to put out communication. And the fact that we live in a day and age that everybody has one of these in their pocket, that sometimes misinformation gets around. And so this is an app that would allow staff members to communicate that there was an emergency from anywhere in the building, simultaneously get that message out to administrators and or other staff, help in the reunification process if needed, and allow information to be disseminated at one time to everybody, even if it's quick, like, yes, we're still in the lockdown, or it's safe to come out of the lockdown, because calling everybody, getting people on and communicating that message, you know, you can start at Fairfield School, and by the time Wendy makes the announcement that a lockdown is over, you still may be on the phone or texting with Burn School or Young School, and now the teachers in that school have texted to somebody in the other school, and they're like, well, no, we're still in that was really a hard piece about thinking about the emergencies. So we're exploring some software that will make that communication much easier. The other piece that it would do is those have the same ability, and I've had a great conversation with, like Chief Clements and things, is that it will provide the same to our first responders. So if we went into a lockdown and it was a serious situation, they and all of their officers, would get that same message at the same time, so they could respond and open their phone up and know that if we said classroom X at Burns School was where the emergency was, they could go to the map on their phone, know where that emergency was, and respond immediately. So we know that time is always important in that. Good news is February vacation's only about a week away, and we'll have the opportunity to spend a little time outside of our schools, hopefully with families and friends, and that would be a great week for us to have a little bit of snow so kids can get outside. And then other than that, that's what I have for tonight. We'll talk about school construction down on in the agenda.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Superintendent Ray? No questions. Moving on to item 8, Chair's Report. Chair Preble?
Yep, I do have an update on committee assignments, so I wanted to just go through that real quickly. So real quick, for policy/personnel committee, I've assigned Beth, Sarah, and William. For finance and infrastructure committees, I've assigned myself, Jennifer, Jeff, and Kevin. For curriculum, which is a newer committee, I have Beth, Sarah, and Artie. I also have some liaison positions that do also exist. For wellness, I have Beth and Jen, myself. For PG&E, I have Beth and Kevin. For dropout prevention, I have myself and Jeff. For calendar committee, I have Sarah and Artie. And for stipend committee liaisons, I have Sarah and William. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much. Any
Thank you.
questions regarding the committee assignments or the chair report? With no questions, moving on to item 9, staff reports. There are no staff reports noted in the memorandum, or excuse me, in your packet. That brings us to item 10, board subcommittee minutes. There was a policy and personnel committee minute. Their next meeting was today at 5:30 p.m., and there are some minutes in your packet. And then the Finance and Infrastructure Committee will meet on March 22nd at 4 p.m. And then the Curriculum Committee has no meeting scheduled at this time. Any question on the minutes of the subcommittees? With no questions, moving on to item 11, old business. There's no old business this evening. And that brings us to item 12, new business. Item A is new hires. In your packet, there was a memorandum that was updated recently requiring some board action. Superintendent Ray, before we move on, is there anything you'd like to add to the memorandum? Okay, with that, entertain a motion. School Board Member Truman.
I move we approve the nomination of those listed under the stipend positions and issue a contract for the 2022-2023 school year.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Richard. Any discussion? Roll call vote. School Board Member Archie.
Yes.
School Board Member Preble.
Yes.
School Board Member Richard.
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune.
Yes.
School Board Member Gale.
Yes.
School Board Member Truman.
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item B. You all received a memorandum of resignations in your packet this evening. Superintendent Ray, before we move forward, anything to add to the memorandum? Seeing no additions, School Board Member Truman.
I move we accept the resignation of Christina Petrulli, Fairfield kindergarten teacher, effective 1/27/23.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? School Board Member Johnston.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item C, a job fair update. Superintendent Ray?
So Chris is going to come up and talk about this piece.
Good evening. I think as we've shared with this board before, long gone are the days when we would wait with bated breath until the class of 2023 graduated from Farmington and rushed through our doors and applied for jobs en masse. And we are, for the first time, really spending a lot of the school department's resources, both financially and in human talent, constantly recruiting to bring in faculty and staff of all types. We had a job fair across the river in Biddeford 2 weeks ago. That was really remarkably successful. We had 20 people come through the door. We were able to sit with each and every one of them and guide 13 of them through an expedited application process. We're going to continue that work moving into the spring. We had a catchment area last year of job fairs between the University of Farmington and the University of Massachusetts. We're just not competitive in that market. We were in a space with Hartford Public Schools, with New York Public Schools, with Boston Public Schools, and one of the strategies that those districts used was to have a placard on each one of their tables that displayed their pay scale. And it was 2 or 3 times, what we were able to advertise, obviously. We went down as a 3-district consortium for Dayton, Biddeford, and Saco, and the only interest that we were able to drum up was someone who thought that we were Dayton, Ohio. And I had to explain the difference between Dayton, Ohio, and Dayton, Maine, and so that was kind of the end of that piece. So we really are focusing our efforts in the coming months on local cities and towns that are close to us, including on February 14th between 8:30 and 12 p.m. I'd invite members of the public to come down and meet with us at the Saco Transportation Center. We are particularly interested and in need of employees in Saco for bus aides, bus drivers, custodians, educational technicians, food service workers, secretaries, and substitute teachers. We've really tried to streamline the process. Previously, folks had to go on to Frontline and fill out a lengthy application system. We've been able to truncate that and basically have a half-page fill-in sheet that if you can write your name and about 3 other details, that we'll consider that your initial sort of foray into the application process. Also, something that we're going to try for this entire job fair is on-the-spot interviews. And if anyone comes with the requisite clearances and all that sort of thing that you have to have for school, we would even consider it on-the-spot job offer as well. So we're continuing to sort of beat the pavement. We're advertising this through boosted posts on Facebook and other social media outlets. We seem to get the best sort of bang for our buck in that regard. And we have, I believe, 4 more job fairs that we're either producing or attending in the next 6 to 8 weeks on the calendar. And we'll sort of keep you updated as we move through that process. We are hiring all positions all the time, all year, to try and fill needed vacancies within the Saco schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Endorf. Any questions at this time from the board? School Board Member Truman, then School Board Member Gale. School Board Member Truman.
Just a quick one. What was the date for the one at the Transportation Department?
Yep, February 14th,
That's what
Sarah,
I thought.
from 8:30 to 12, and Jeremy's running an omelet bar, so you can come and you can order your omelet, and he'll fix it just how you like it.
Perfect.
School Board Member Gale.
Noticed on the hiring memo that there were a number of ed tech positions that have recently been hired. Is that, have you found that this is a result of this push, or is there
Yeah,
anything
where
you
we've
can
had
learn
most success, William, is with the ed techs and the substitutes. And one of the things that we haven't done a great job with in the past, and I think it's mostly a function of capacity and bandwidth, is providing ongoing training and inculcation for new staff members, especially itinerant staff like substitutes. So we've had 2 preliminary meetings to talk about how we can put on sort of like a new staff seminar that's really targeted towards substitutes and educational technicians. I think for a sub, even someone who has experience in education, coming into a strange building for the first time can be very intimidating. So we're talking about a program that really starts with like a full day welcome, some kind of do's and don'ts and basics of the trade, some skill craft, and then literally hopping on a yellow school bus, driving building to building, acquainting yourself a little bit with the campus, coming in, having a warm welcome with the principal, maybe a brief tour of the building. And that can also help folks who are maybe a little uncertain whether they'd rather be with an 8th grader or a 2nd grader get a sense of, you know what, Fairfield School is really the right place for me, or I made a great connection with April Noble at Burns School, or whatever that might be. And because one of our challenges with substitutes is sometimes people come and they might not just be in the right spot for their personality or their disposition, and they only stay for a couple days, and then we don't see them again. We'd really rather have them start off strong, in the right place, and with a support network built in, and some opportunities for ongoing training, so that when they maybe feel a little overwhelmed by classroom management, they know that if they can just hold on until Thursday, that's going to be the paid topic that we're going to offer that day after the school day ends to support them in that work.
And following up on that, do you do something similar with the ed tech positions as well?
Yeah, so that was Jeremy's suggestion, actually. We sort of came to him with a preliminary proposal, like, hey, would there be budget support for this piece for substitutes? And he said, I'd really like to see you fold in ed techs to that as well, which is, I think, why I brought it up, because you had asked about the tech position. But we experienced some of that same turnover, especially with Tech 1s as well, and I think Jess is probably always looking for qualified candidates to be on the bench for an ed tech job.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Endorf.
Thanks.
That brings us to item D, and that is the TA tuition overage plan. In your packet, you received a memorandum regarding the TA overages. Superintendent Ray, do you want to speak further on that item?
In any situation, as we know, and I'd communicated with you, that the tuition amount at Thornton Academy came in at an increase of 6.7%, and we had not only budgeted additional students, which many of that additional students kind of buffer got cut into with the welcoming of our new neighbors, that when we built the budget, we didn't know that was going to happen. And so it leaves us in that line with a deficit of $157,000, and making sure that we have a plan and having money encumbered below the areas that we are recommending to fill that for this year, to make sure that, again, we still have a lot of heating season, electrical prices. If anyone's seen their delivery piece of bill, while we're protected on the kilowatt hour piece on the contract, you're not necessarily protected on the supply side of the delivery portion of that. We hope that we're not burning, having weekends like this weekend. We don't want to have more of those, because we eat into the fuel budget, which again, prices, we have pretty good locked-in prices, but just having a plan. I think that one of the things that people sometimes forget when you're looking at schools and or municipalities is that, even if you had $500,000 left in a budget at the end of the year, you're looking at 1% of your budget. That gives zero room for errors, mistakes, a bad day with snow load, a boiler that goes down quickly. And so you have to make sure that you're in a position that, like this year, we were very concerned at one point that we may have to go back to the city council as the new neighbor piece was rolling out, but we were able to cover some of those pieces. So this is our plan for the rest of this year, to make sure that we have funds encumbered to cover those costs.
Thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Ray? School Board Member LaFortune?
Just to follow up to that topic. So we're about to head into the budget cycle. So the plan of this being through the end of this year, when we start the budget cycle, all of that is in the one that we will be discussing, correct? Okay.
Correct, and I think one of the pieces that, built into the budget, when you look at tuition for next year, we have 5% built in. And again, that may even be a little bit, low, because one of the factors that I was looking through that they determined to use for the increase in MAT is around a 2-year average on inflation. And this year, that piece of it ate up 3.99% of the increase. And I just, trying to think about a 2-year average. If you think back 2 years ago, we weren't having the same conversations about inflation as we have recently had in the last 6 months. So I worry a little bit about where that piece will settle as we move forward.
School Board Member Gale?
So I guess the literary or literacy coach position at Young School, why was that one selected?
Because that was that current open position that we didn't fill this fall, when we had a person move out of that position, and we had to make some decisions about whether we would be uprooting classrooms at the time and switching people around. And really, we felt the best decision at that point in time was not to give children a new classroom teacher in October. I think that's a pretty tough thing for an elementary parent if people are to move around. And so that one is selected because it's open. And that's a pot of money that you can easily identify.
And then, so then in the next budget, is the plan to have this position, I guess, get reposted? So at the beginning of the
So
school year, or I guess I'm a little confused about
So when we get to the budget pieces, yes, that position will be in our budget, but in a couple of more items, you guys will start to get a preview of where we're at budget-wise. And so those will be, you have to make some decisions that you guys will have to make on what the budget increase would look like. So that position's in the next budget. You'll have to make some decisions on that piece as a whole.
Okay. And then there's no way to backfill or find $65,000 from our capital improvement budget based on unanticipated freeing up of revenue sources, I guess, in terms of line items, or?
Again, there's always those things that you can look at, but we've made a pretty good commitment to making sure that our roofs at SMS are taken care of. City Council put money in for furniture, for painting, for those pieces. The other piece that you have to look at is that there also would probably be, Will, and I'll talk to you this a little bit about a personal story, is a few years ago when my child was at Young School, you had a mid-year switch in September, which resulted in a young kid who loved their teacher, and very rightfully so, wanting a different position. And then you're looking for a classroom teacher for 20 new students early into the year, and I don't think that's the best thing when you look at those positions. So when we make those decisions about filling a position sometimes midway through the year, you have to look at what the impacts can be to the entire school and the entire population. And I think in this situation, that's something that I was unwilling to want to put forward, is that you're going to swing around and impact some kiddos. So when you go forward and you look at that now and filling that this year, one, you have to look at a qualified candidate. If that's somebody internally, can you properly replace that position? And then when you look at our capital projects, one of the things that we've focused on the last couple of years, making sure that we don't ignore them, so that we're not in the same situations that we have been in the past. And when we roll out this budget, we'll have some other steps in there to make sure that the one facility that we know will be remaining in this school department has new roofs, which we'll be able to accomplish at the end of this year, that the entire roof will be replaced. The council gave us a great gift in the amount of money in painting and furniture that will be almost all replaced in that, looking at the safety and security in our hallway so that students throughout the day don't have to, it's really awkward at SMS as you walk through, and that you can have kids kind of going to class and in through the gym while also intermixing with people who are waiting, which probably not the safest situation in the world. We've looked at what we've done in our cafeteria, providing new cafeteria tables to make that, to upgrade that piece. So again, anytime you look into that capital budget, I recommend that you're probably costing yourself more money
Yeah, I
at the
guess
end
I was
of the
just
year.
thinking if we got a grant and we were anticipating buying something, and then we get, I guess part of my concern is looking at that and then just over the last several months, hearing that there's an influx of students at Young School, and then seeing on here that we're gonna be cutting a position, or not cutting, but not funding an unfilled position for the rest of the school year at Young School. It's just, I'm just having a little bit of trouble.
But see, at the same time, Will, we also have a situation where, because of the rise in ELL students, we were forced to add an ELL teacher to that staff that we didn't plan for either. So I have to kind of cover that money as well throughout the budgets, and that's just continuing to fine-tune certain different lines and all of those pieces. So we've had, when you think about additional pieces that we've done this year, not only on the tuition line, but we have 2.5 ELL teachers that we weren't in the budget at the beginning of the school year that we had to come up with and find. So promised you guys we wouldn't overspend here, and that's going to be something that is much more difficult for us to do when you have those surprise things that happen.
Thank you. School Board Member Truman, did you have a question?
Mr. Gale took care of them for me.
Thank you. School Board Member LaFortune.
Yeah, just a follow-up to that. So just to round out the whole thing around the position that's unfilled. So at this point, given how challenging it's been to hire, is our most likely way to fill that an internal position anyway? And then we're talking about a ripple somewhere that we also then would have to fill.
Correct. And many times in a position such as an instructional coach, you have people who have been in your district that have worked really hard and gone through a lot of the training and done some of those pieces, the desire to move into that position. So when you look at that and you think that that may come from someone who's currently on your staff that you then have to replace, which then creates a change in programming for kiddos, meaning calling all 20 parents in a classroom and said, hey, your kid's teacher just became the instructional coach. Now I've got to find either a substitute or someone to do that for you once into the school year. I suspect that parents of younger kids will definitely have some feelings on that piece. I know certainly I did when that happened to me as a parent, because your kid has developed this wonderful relationship with the person that's in front of them. And that can be very hard, especially in a situation where, we have come back from not having a lot of time in front of teachers. You have absences that people have to stay home for nowadays. When you had a cold, you used to, 3 or 4 years ago, we were thinking about how you kind of fought through it, and now you really want people to kind of stay home because you're not trying to pass COVID. And so I think you have to look at all of those value pieces and what do you value, and I believe that once kiddos have made that connection with their classroom teacher in a year, you got to try to do everything you can to preserve that. And sometimes you can't, but you got to try.
Does that answer your question?
It answers my question. I guess in a more tactical, from a more tactical angle, during the period that it was posted, did we even have an internal candidate come forward?
No, because I didn't post that position.
Any further questions on the memorandum regarding the Thornton Academy tuition update? Superintendent Ray, are you looking for a action on this item tonight, or are you going to bring forward a budget amendment to present?
Nope, just informational of making sure that we have covered that piece.
Thank you. That brings us to item E of the agenda, and that is the ED 279 state funding update. You have a memorandum in your packet from Superintendent Ray. Superintendent Ray.
So just as we work through these items, E and F really go together. And F was something that we added today because I had budget update on there, and we were able to pull together some numbers. And before you leave tonight, I need to know from people who wants all 800 and plus pages on paper format, and who would really like to have that as a PDF, because no sense printing it if you don't. But let's talk a little bit about this piece and where we are subsidy-wise. So the 279, if you can pull up that piece in there, that's your state funding formula. And what is it that we know about state funding formulas? Is that there are two factors that influence it the most: student count and property valuation. We spent a lot of time talking about property valuation last year. So when you think about property valuation, Saco has seen a lot of growth in property valuation. And when you think about that piece, Saco's property valuation for this current year on a 3-year average increases $181 million. That's what's figured in this budget. Now, when you look at the 3-year average for 2025, you're going to be looking at $221 million, which is going to put you at a point where you're at about 9% valuation increase. Anytime your valuation increase is more than the state, that's a bad day for us, because they're saying that your community has the ability to raise more money in taxes. Now, the other day, I had the opportunity to speak to the mayor's group about some of the changes we're experiencing. There's 10 mayors that kind of sit together. Saco's on that piece. Auburn, Biddeford, Sanford, Westbrook, big group. And what's really interesting when you look at the 10 kind of, I'd say you're about the largest communities in the state of Maine. Portland's there, but Bangor is not. Bill, is that correct?
Yeah, there's a couple of big communities that still haven't joined as the mayor's coalition transitions from what was the mayor's coalition to what it will be, a 503c nonprofit.
And so when you look at those communities that are a little bit larger in nature, you're starting to see a trend that they're having much larger increases in valuation, which is a little bit scary, because now as you get to a point where all of those communities are over 10% more, you're going to see less state subsidy going to those communities. At the same time, Saco has a free and reduced lunch rate that's a little bit over 25%. And so you have members of our community that fall in that economically disadvantaged piece, but at the same time, you have rising valuations that push your property tax up, which says that your community theoretically can pay more. At the same time, we know that every cost goes up. Just go to the store, we know those pieces go up. And so you kind of start getting into this perfect storm of a situation where costs are rising up and subsidies going down. And so in this scenario that we have here, and when you look at the 279 in the budget piece, Saco for pre-K through 12 education lost $256,000 from what it received the year before. And that's just a mathematical computation, because theoretically your value goes up. And so when you think of a situation where your subsidy from the state is going down and your costs go up, your spread actually gets a little bigger. So your costs go up plus take away, bigger spread. And that's going to continue to be the challenge that we see here, because while the state puts things on a 3-year average of property valuation to kind of help smooth some of the drastic spikes, you have a situation that when you look at the property valuation that's reported by the Secretary of State in January of each year, when you look at 2023 versus 2022, not on a 3-year average, but just at a 1-year piece, you're looking at an increase of like $397 million in value. Eventually, that piece starts to catch up on the 3-year average, and now you're looking at a situation where you have an valuation increase of over 10% in a community. When you think about the valuation increase, there's sometimes, and again, probably Brian and Bill and some of the city councilors would be able to explain this better than I can, but when you think about valuation and you think about the house that you may have bought 20 years ago at one price, and you can say that, I believe we talked about it, Chris, the median home income that we came up with the other day in Saco was $498. So as you think about your home value going up in price, in some sense you say, well, it's great, my home's valued more, but there's obvious a mill rate calculation that goes into that. But you don't want to move. You love where you live and you want to stay there, so it's really not like it's found money. And you would, if you did sell it, you'd have to replace it with something. But it's also thinking about what new value has been in there, and the new value is the piece that, you know, you'll debate as a municipality and talk about of where money goes where, and did it raise additional taxes and whatnot. But then you turn over to just your expense increase. And I just want to give you a couple of quick numbers. When you look at Thornton Academy tuition for next year's, figured in the same number of students, because I think we've talked about that we believe that our student counts based off our new neighbors will probably be very similar next year. You're looking at a tuition increase of about $1 million at a 5% in that line. When you look at salary increases and steps across the board, you're looking at about $886,000. When you look at main PERS is going to increase from 3.84 to 4.47%, you're looking at $106,000. And then when you look at health insurance increases and changes throughout the district, you're looking at about another $194,000. And when you look at those pieces, you very quickly can see what the driving costs of a budget does. So when we look at this budget, we haven't really, in the first draft that you will be getting, you haven't decreased anything. We've included and kept in some of the ELL positions. We've looked at reallocating staff in special ed to make sure that caseloads are equal and covered across the district. We decreased some of the capital expenditures by $500,000 that the city council had given us money for furniture and for painting, and that will kind of go off the way, so you kind of take $500 out of that, but still keeping $600,000 in so we can finish that roof piece. Looking at adding additional capital funds from existing carryover, looking at funding field trips and educational experiences for kids at our schools so that there's equal access for all, and we're not continuing to kind of put out there a situation where families have to make choices and pay for those, but just open that. And then looking at, we did have a great thing happen for us, that 6 buses qualified for state reimbursement funds, but you have to come up with that 1-year lease, so that's a great investment to have. That when you look at our budget piece, when you get your printed out portion, you're going to look at a 4.63% increase, which is $2 million. But because we lost subsidy, you're going to be looking at a tax increase of about where you stand on day one, $2.2 million. And really, when you think about 4%, 4.3% increase, there's not a lot of things that haven't gone up 4.36%. But at the same time, you know that your municipality has increases as well, just because of employees and all of those pieces. So it's going to be a real balancing act for everybody here on the community to think about where we are budget-wise, and hopefully keeping right on track. We'll meet with the city council next week to talk about land, because we know we have new schools coming and all of those things, and knowing that we'll be going to the voters in November to think about that ask of, what our budget situation is going to be. And so this is where we are today. Later this week, I'll have printed copies for you guys to look at, and we'll get to start that process of figuring out where we are in comfort-wise, kind of as a community.
Thank you. A lot of information to unpack there, but just make sure that you get your requests in for a printed package or a PDF package or electronic package to the superintendent. Based on that, any questions regarding the ED 279 state funding portion and maybe even a little bit of the budget portion that Superintendent Ray went into? Superintendent Ray, anything further on the budget update, item F, that you want to touch upon?
No, that was really it, was looking at that memo and looking at those pieces. And you guys will get, in the next several meetings, you'll get to see the real explanation of the 279 like we did last year, and all of that real exciting talk about valuations and 3-year averages and all of that stuff. As we just look at where the numbers lead us and what, our internal battles, and whether the conversation's here or with the city council about what can we do to get to that sweet spot, for taxpayers, and making sure that we fund our schools and we maintain our schools. That's an important piece. And think about what decisions we need to make for our kids and for our community that's going to be the right one.
School Board Member Gale.
Just a real quick, on the 279, Jeremy, the way that you lay that out and explain it, I think is fantastic. It's really transparent. It's easy to understand the way that you've laid it out. So I'd encourage folks in the public, when we talk that through and you're going through those spreadsheets, to tune in, because it's a great run through and it's easy to understand. So thank you for developing that.
So that will be, I think we're be scheduled for that one in that first meeting in March. And then City Council is March 20th, I believe is the date that you'll see that. And, there's still work to do between now and then. There's some fine tuning and pieces that need to occur in all of those budgets. But this is a kind of a quick snapshot of where we stand today, what's there. Hasn't really been anything taken away yet, because we're not at that point to talk about that. I do continue to worry a little bit, though, where we go. Utilities is so difficult to predict right now. And that's the piece that I worry about a little bit more, because, while we can sit here, and I know it's not time to lock in for the city for fuel, it seems like one world event here can really drive prices or lower prices, and I almost feel like, you just have almost no control over that anymore. And then, just thinking about, as we refine our student and class counts in places, one of the challenges that, again, we talked about this earlier this fall, like the challenge that April has at Burns schools is it's really not a classroom available if you have high, without displacing somebody or moving people around or putting people on a cart, which isn't good. So we have some limitations in some of those things that aren't great, while also making sure that, you know, we provide options and support kiddos. And, you know, kids come to school with so much more, I think, on their plate nowadays than they typically did 25 years ago, or at least we have those greater conversations. And I think what's, not that it's encouraging, but Maine School Management and Superintendent Association is we'll be putting out a couple of surveys to members of just what those initial first drafts are of where we're at, where's everybody at. And I think that's the challenging piece that we hear from superintendents, is that it seems like everybody right now is in that 4 to 8% range, and a lot of it is just salary and benefit driven, without changing or adding too much in those areas, because we need to be competitive in hiring pieces, and that drives, you know, some of those costs, and we have to make sure that people are making a wage that allows them to live in our area, which is important, because when you think about what housing and rental costs have done in the last couple of years, that's a major concern for people. And so I'm not sure how this will all play out, but we'll get to have plenty of conversation about it over the course of this spring.
Thank you. Any further questions regarding budget or TA tuition, or excuse me, 8279 funding? Seeing no further questions, moving on to item G, which is school construction updates. Superintendent Ray.
Okay, so we have had several conversations with the DOE recently. We'll have another one on Monday morning, correct, Meg? With the DOE, just trying to really stay on that timeline. For our joint meeting on Monday night, we'll have a conversation, an executive session with the city council to discuss some more of the land options. As we look at where we are kind of today, some of the work that we're working on is really in that kind of figuring out how many classrooms you need for this and how many you need for that, based off statistical data and your kind of projections on future enrollments. That's going to be an interesting conversation for us, because just because, let's say, we have the current staff doesn't necessarily always meet the formula that the state has. And so you'll have to have some local decisions around local pieces of square footage and conversation that's in that, because what's interesting about the process is that there is a formula for what a school department should have. I can't remember how many exact square feet it is per kid and per everything, Meg, on that, but, you know, our recommended size for a building 1 through 5 is about 140,000 square feet, and I think we're at like 153,000-ish, Meg, and growing, and that's the hard part, because, you know, just here's a simple situation that we're working on. Currently, right now, we know that Burns School cafeteria at lunchtime doesn't necessarily hold the number of kids that would make it most effective to manage a school. You probably can get about 100 in there at a time, and you have 600 kids. So Marie's running like April's running like 6 lunches, 7 lunches, 6. Then you have a state formula that says you should have X number of square feet for a cafeteria. And then you try to work with them on how you would possibly navigate your school day if we only stay within that recommended amount of square footage. And you try to explain that, no, you can't have lunch starting at 9:30 a.m. and going till 2. And then you make references to the law. And then you talk about the bill that's sitting in legislature right now to have a mandatory 30-minute lunch, which would increase that time in a day. And you try to do all of that while predicting what things are going to be like 4 years down the road in construction costs. That's an example. Another example is the conversations of navigating, say, gym space. While some people may say it's very okay to run physical education classes with a curtain in the middle and call it good, I don't necessarily agree with that. But we also, one of the things that we struggle with in the community is just having enough gym space on the weekends for our parks and recs and all of those pieces. And we're moving from a situation where right now you have a Burns gym and you have a Fairfield gym. You may not have that situation in the future, so making sure that you have enough gym space. So as all of those conversations that go on of trying to figure out what they will pay for versus what they would say, if you want this, this has got to be a local option, on top of conversations about all of the other great things that we'd like to have. That's a really interesting process right now as we go through that and think about the things that make sense when running a school versus not. And, you know, one of the pieces that we had some discussion about is most schools will place our nurse's office close to the main office. Makes a lot of sense because parents, when they come in to pick up a sick kid, have it by the office. One of the points that we're trying to make with them is that there should be an auxiliary nurse's office located next to the entrance and exit to the playground. Because kids get bumps and bruises on the playground, and when you have a 15-minute recess time, and they may have to walk through a building that may be, I don't know, a quarter of a mile from the playground to the nurse's office, in a snowsuit, and tracking in mud, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So we have to try to advocate for some of those things about, as you look at a design of the building, functionality. Where do some of those things go? And it's really fun to kind of do those pieces to figure out how you can kind of shape a building for the future.
Any questions on the school construction update? No questions. Moving on. Brings us to item H, a first reading of policies. Policy DKC, travel expense reimbursement, DD, grants, DI, fiscal accounting and reporting, DIDA, fixed assets, DC, use of credit cards, DN, school property disposition, DFF-R, school activity funds, student activity funds, administrative procedures, and DFF, accounting for non-budgeted funds and student activity funds. Is there a motion? School Board Member Johnston?
Thank you. I move we approve the first reading of policies DKC, DD, DI, DIDA, DC, DN, DFF-R, and DFF, and also strike policies DFF-E1, DFF-E2, DFF-E3, DID, and DJA-R.
Second.
Motion's been made by School Board Member Johnston, second by School Board Member Truman, to approve the first reading of policies and to strike the policies identified as well. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item I of the agenda, and that is the second reading of policies. Policy CB-E, the superintendent job description, AC, non-discrimination, equal opportunity, and affirmative action, ACAA, harassment and sexual harassment of students, ACAA-R, student discrimination, harassment, and Title IV, sexual harassment complaint procedures, ACAB, harassment and sexual harassment of school employees, ACAB-R, employee discrimination, harassment, and Title IX, sexual harassment complaint procedures, GCFB, recruiting and hiring of administrative staff, and GBN, family and medical leave. Is there a motion? School Board Member Johnston.
Thank you. I move we approve the second reading of policies GB-E, AC, ACAA, ACAA-R, ACAB, ACAB-R, GCFB, and GBN.
Second.
Motion's been made by School Board Member Johnston, second by School Board Member Truman. Any discussion on the policy? Second reading. Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 13 of the agenda. There's no other information at this time. Does anybody have anything that they want to share? Moving on to item 14, there is no executive session this evening. With that brings us to item 15, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
School Board Member Truman, is there a
Second.
second? School Board Member Preble, any discussion on adjourning? Roll call to adjourn. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richard?
Yes.
School Board Member LaFortune?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to adjourn at 8:06 PM. Have a great evening, everyone.